Hello and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with the headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Xizhi. Coming up in this edition, the FBI is investigating an incident at former US President Donald Trump's golf course as a potential assassination attempt, with a suspect arrested. Germany has tightened border controls to address irregular migration and protect the country from extremist threats. And Yemen's Houthi group has decided to intensify military operations against Israel, while the Israeli Prime Minister has vowed retaliation. We begin in North America. The FBI says it is investigating an incident at former US President Donald Trump's golf course in West Palm Beach as a potential assassination attempt. Law enforcement officials say they have apprehended a suspect who was spotted with an AK-47-style assault rifle. An email that Trump sent to his fundraising list, as seen by Reuters, says the Republican presidential candidate is safe and well. The White House says President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris had been briefed and were relieved to know that Trump is safe. The incident came 2 months after another assassination attempt where Trump was injured in his ear, and less than 2 months before the presidential election. It is Tianshan has more.
Apparent assassination attempt, which took place at around 1:30 p.m. Local time at the Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach, Florida. Now, that's where the former president frequently goes to play golf. Immediately, he was taken to safety when one of the Secret Service agents engaged with what looked like an AK-47 style rifle sticking out of the bushes. And we understand, of course, the former president is now in safety, but let's take a quick listen to how the local sheriff's department recounted those moments.
In the bushes where this guy was is an AK-47 style rifle with a scope, 2 backpacks which were hung on the fence that had ceramic tile in them, and a GoPro, which he was going to take pictures of.
When the suspect took off, he was stopped on the road and taken into the custody. We understand he's now been identified as 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Ruth. And of course, he is facing several state charges. Now, it's important to emphasize that this is now taking place almost exactly 2 months after that first assassination attempt in Pennsylvania. As you will remember, the Secret Service faced immense scrutiny following that incident. And 2 weeks after that incident, it was the director of the agency, the Secret Service agency, has resigned. Now, this sort of coming right on the heels of that incident, of course, brings a lot of questions into how the election period will continue from now on. Obviously, we have not much time left until November 5th, how the campaigns will be held. This also goes to show the extent of polarization that we've been seeing in this country. Finally, it will also raise some questions around the accessibility of such assault rifles to ordinary citizens, which in itself is one of the election issues that are being debated.
That was Edith Tianshan on the new assassination attempt on Donald Trump. In Europe, 8 people have died while trying to cross the English Channel from France. The overcrowded vessel was carrying dozens of people from Africa and the Middle East when it capsized. The UK has pledged to work with its partners to tackle the illegal migrant issue. Catherine Zhu has more.
The vessel had set off from the Pas-de-Calais area of France near the town of Wimereux with 59 people on board, as we heard. The rubber dinghy is said to have broken apart on rocks a bit further up the coast a short time after launch. Now, French rescue services, including 20 police officers, 50 firefighters, a number of vessels and a helicopter were all scrambled, and around 50 people were brought to shore. 8 men died in the incident, with French authorities saying they came from Eritrea, Sudan, Syria, Egypt, Iran and Afghanistan. 6 people were taken to hospital, including a 10-month-old baby who was suffering hypothermia. Meanwhile, the UK government has just confirmed that 800 people arrived in England on 14 small boats on Saturday. British authorities say they're working with France to try to tackle this issue more widely, with Prime Minister Keir Starmer pledging to smash the gangs. Here's what British Foreign Secretary David Lammy had to say following this latest tragedy.
We have to smash the gangs. You can only do that with working with our closest neighbours in Europe. That's why the Prime Minister was in Germany. He's going to Italy. He's been, of course, in France. It's important that we work upstream to encourage people to stay in their country where there are jobs and opportunities.
I was just in Kent speaking with refugee groups who expressed a great deal of frustration that the UK government is not doing more to open safe routes for migrants. They say that forces people into making these dangerous crossings while fleeing war and trying to join family members. Some asylum seekers I spoke to said they had no choice but to make these journeys due to the dire situations in their home countries. Now, this latest tragedy brings the death toll in the Channel so far this year to 46.
That was Catherine Drew with the latest on the migrant issue in the UK. Meanwhile, Germany has tightened border control, expanding checks to all land borders, a move the government says aims to address irregular migration and protect the country from extremist threats. It comes after a knife attack by an asylum seeker last month and recent political surge in support of the far right. Some of Germany's neighbours are concerned that the new measures will have an impact on their countries. Johannes Pleschberger reports from a border point in southern Germany.
Random checks on cars, trains and buses. Nothing new here at Bidding, the German-Austrian border crossing where controls have been in place for almost 10 years. On Monday, this will be extended to all of Germany's land border points, with some fearing traffic jams and delays.
I think this is a weakness for the European community. Yeah, because we opened all the borders, so closing it is a step back.
I find it quite good for Germany, so lots of illegal people are there, and I think it's good that we do something against them.
Every day 25,000 vehicles pass this border crossing alone. Hundreds of thousands more travel through Germany's other crossings, which are now all subject to police checks.
Germany wants to toughen its border controls after a Syrian asylum seeker fatally stabbed 3 people in the town of Solingen last month. Violent incidents have led to a massive support for far-right parties in 2 regional elections. Now another state election is around the corner in Brandenburg, and polls show migration is the top concern among voters.
Whether German police will start refusing to accept asylum seekers at its borders is still unclear. Negotiations between the government and opposition parties have been turbulent.
We will do everything possible to refuse entry within the framework of the law. We have offered proposals for effective entry refusal and are prepared to work with the opposition.
But Germany's neighbour Austria is concerned over the effects of the new border arrangements and insists its policies will remain the same.
We will not take anyone who has been refused illegal entry to Germany. We have been very clear about this, and as far as Austria is concerned, this is non-negotiable.
In the first half of this year, illegal migrant crossings into Germany actually fell by 7% compared to the same period last year. The new controls on Germany's western and northern borders are initially scheduled to be in place for 6 months.
That was Johannes Pleschberger on Germany's border control measures. In the Middle East, Yemen's Houthi group has announced plans to continue and intensify its military operations against Israel. The threat came after the group launched a missile attack on central Israel for the first time. An Israeli military official said they intercepted and destroyed the hypersonic ballistic missile. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to impose what he called a heavy price on Houthis. Jonathan Regev has more from Tel Aviv.
The IDF published a statement saying that this is a surface-to-surface missile that was fired from Yemen, and it was fragmented somewhere along the way. Was that the reason why it was not intercepted? That is something that has to be investigated. We do know that this missile, or at least parts of this missile, actually reached their destination, which is central Israel, and made landfall. But Israel cannot ignore the fact that this missile fired from Yemen made landfall. It spent more than 11 minutes in the air, more than enough time for Israeli satellites, for American satellites to detect it, to intercept it. It did not happen, and that is something that has to be thoroughly investigated. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the cabinet meeting saying that Yemen already knows very well, the Houthis know very well, that Israel has inflicted major damage in the past when a drone fired by the Houthis reached Tel Aviv. Were they deterred by that Israeli attack? If this surface-to-surface missile was fired again, then the answer is probably no. Will there be an Israeli retaliation? Probably yes. Will it deter the Houthis from making another attempt? Probably not.
That was Jonathan Regev on the Middle East tensions. In Asia, China has relocated residents and issued emergency responses for the coastal regions as Typhoon Babinka lands in Shanghai. Provinces including Jiangsu, Anhui and Zhejiang are expecting heavy rain and a strong wind. Emergency response crew and equipment are in place in those places. Flights and trains in the eastern cities were suspended and all highways in Shanghai are temporarily shut. Babinka, the strongest typhoon to hit Shanghai in several decades, landed during a 3-day Mid-Autumn Festival holiday and disrupted many travel plans. For more on the devastation of Babinka in Shanghai, Li Shuan reports from the eastern city.
The Category 1 typhoon has brought heavy rains and winds exceeding 160 kilometers per hour. Trees and road signs were rooted, and sustained heavy rain has turned roads into rivers. And also construction sites were completely disrupted. Bicycles were scattered across the ground. Now, China has issued Typhoon Red Alert, and Shanghai is really not a city that's prone to strong typhoons. But local authorities have made emergency plans for all possible scenarios that Babinka might bring. For instance, the city public transportation services are halted. Over 900 flights have canceled, and only about 80,000 passengers will be traveling by railway compared to over 750,000. And also highways and bridges are closed. City landmarks and amusement parks are also closed. Emergency services and the police are patrolling to ensure public safety. All these measures are to ensure that people stay at home and stay safe.
That was Li Shuan in Shanghai. Now, recapping the headlines, the FBI is investigating an incident at former U.S. President Donald Trump's golf course as a potential assassination attempt, with a suspect arrested. Germany has tightened border controls to address irregular migration and protect the country from extremist threats. And Yemen's Houthi group has decided to intensify military operations against Israel, while the Israeli Prime Minister has vowed retaliation. And that's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports and culture, you can subscribe to The Beijing Hour, a 1-hour podcast news and magazine program. We welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Qi Zhi. Thank you for listening.